Chapter 381. There was no doubt that the owner of the domineering voice was dustless. This guy, staring at the boundless golden light swords, the woman in red frowned. Her face was no longer as calm as before. Instead, a hint of caution appeared on her delicate, jade-like face. At the same time, the golden light sword that was about to cut the entire world in half came down. Child's play. Looking up at the light beam that was about to cut her in half, the woman in red's expression was indifferent. She lifted her slender finger slightly, revealing her snow-white wrist. A bloody light rose from the ground and headed straight for the light beam above her head. The bloody light flew into the air and underwent a shocking change. It suddenly exploded, forming a red barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing and covered the entire sky. The ordinary-looking red barrier was extremely weak and fluttered with the wind. Poochie! The invincible golden light beam came and inevitably slashed the crimson barrier. She thought that it would directly explode, but the truth was the opposite. The barrier was extremely tough. Under the ferocious impact, it displayed an unimaginable elasticity. Not only did it not break, but it also bounced off the light beam. How can such a weak move be defeated? The woman in red's eyes were filled with pride. Just as she was about to ruthlessly mock Dustless, a special energy fluctuation suddenly came from beside her. Slightly stunned, she subconsciously turned around. The scene that greeted her eyes almost made her go crazy. Unknowingly, Huey and Dustless were standing side by side. Cunning brat. The woman in red's pretty face turned ugly. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent as she glared at Dustless. Endless murderous intent was not concealed at all. A rapidly oppressive aura raged out like a tide, pressing down on Dustless and Huey. Let's put aside our grudge for now and deal with her first. Turning his head and glancing at Huey, Dustless said coldly. Although he helped her out just now, he did not expect such a proud and strong woman like Huey to bow her head and thank him. Hearing this, Huey only indifferently glanced at Dustless. You and her are both ambitious wolves. Both of you want to devour me and take me for your own. It also happened to coincide with what Dustless was thinking. Huey G's brows were filled with coldness, and she did not appreciate it. In her opinion, Dustless and the red-clothed woman in front of her were jackals of the same tribe. They all coveted her power. Dustless's eyes flashed with displeasure and his expression turned gloomy. The strength of this mysterious invader was terrifying. In fact, he didn't want to join forces with Huey, but he had no choice. This woman was too terrifying. If he didn't join forces with Huey, it wasn't impossible for both of them to die here. Mother, the current situation is serious. Even if you ask a tiger for its skin, there is no way. If you fall into the hands of Uchiha Dustless, you will have a chance to make a comeback. If you fall into the hands of that woman, I am afraid that you will never be able to break out of the cage. Seeing that Huey was not interested in Dustless's proposal, Black Setsu suggested tentatively, and at the same time, changed the thread of discussion. You should know the ability of that woman. If you are swallowed by her, it means that you will completely enter the end. Even the immortal body can't escape her decay and erosion. Please think twice before you act. The immortal body is useless. What is the origin of that woman? His expression froze, and the mysterious red-clothed woman in front of him was labeled as more dangerous. From the tone of Black Setsu, the immortal body of Huey could be easily annihilated. Black Setsu's tone was hesitant, as if he was considering whether to tell the truth of the matter to Dustless. After pondering for a while, he said, she and Mother came from the same land. She was Mother's life and death enemy since 1,000 years ago. This woman's means are also extremely cruel. Don't look at her gentle face, she is extremely cruel. Thinking of the past, Black Setsu's tone was full of fear, and he said hoarsely, her ability is very strange. She can swallow everything. All creatures are nourishment for her to become stronger. Even Mother's immortal body can be swallowed. Black Setsu's tone was trembling. Obviously, he wasn't lying. Making everything in the world into her own nourishment. Her means are really ruthless. No wonder she has such a terrifying murderous intent. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes solidified, and the murderous intent in his eyes was awe-inspiring. Hinata, Haruo, Konan, and the other girls were still fighting with the enemy in the shinobi world. If he let the tiger return to the mountain, it means that Haruo and the other girls will become her meal. Dustless will never allow this to happen. Even if we join forces, it's useless. This woman's means are extremely strange. Her ability is similar to yours. She can also ignore most of the physical attacks. Kagaya suddenly said, agreeing with Black Setsu's previous suggestion. Although Black Setsu's previous words were unpleasant, the reality was as he said. Falling into the hands of Dustless, they may be able to break out of the cage in the future. Being swallowed by this woman means the complete end. Not necessarily. Hearing that Kagaya chose to cooperate, Dustless breathed a sigh of relief. If this woman is arrogant to the end, there is no other way in the end except to die. It's good that she is immune to physical attacks, but we are not without means to subdue her. The corner of his mouth raised into a confident description. Dustless gave a feeling of extraordinarily bright, full of vitality, looking at the woman in red. His voice was resolute and decisive. We can use Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei to seal her. The power of Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei, used by Dustless and Kagaya together is self-evident. At the beginning, the Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei, used by Otsutsuki Himura and Otsutsuki Hagoromo could easily seal Kagaya. Now, Kagaya and Kuroto joined forces to use the Rikudo, Chibaku Tensei, can easily seal Kagaya. Kagaya's expression froze slightly, and only then did she realize that the kid in front of her, who is thousands of years younger than her, also has Rinnegan and Tensegan. It's not impossible to defeat the woman in red. Chapter 382. Dustless's expression was calm, and his eyes were burning with fighting spirit. The depression in his heart turned into an endless fighting spirit. He was like an unsheathed divine sword that could destroy the world, cutting through all obstacles and sweeping through everything. The awe-inspiring fighting spirit soared into the sky, and even the air was being oppressed. Uchiha Dustless, Kagaya glanced at Dustless from the corner of her eyes, and a look of surprise flashed in her eyes. Facing such a desperate situation, Dustless could still maintain such a high fighting spirit, which really surprised her. First, test her, then find a loophole and seal it. After staring at the woman in red for a while, Dustless whispered. Without waiting for Kagaya to react, his body flashed with golden light, and a straight divine rainbow whizzed out. When he reappeared, he was already behind the woman in red. The sword in his hand was sharp and ruthless, and it directly slashed towards the woman in red's head. Puchi! Dustless's expression was cold, and his killing intent soared to the sky. He did not hesitate to ruthlessly destroy the woman. The beautiful figure was cruelly split into two, turning into a bloody mist and countless dark red blood beads. Little brother, you really don't know how to be gentle with a woman. I really hope to have a wonderful night with you. In the world where I live, they all call me Mingyu Immortal Fairy. My real name is Mo Luoyue. Her voice was filled with resentment, and her tone was filled with endless charm. Accompanied by a burning fragrance, it poured into the heart of one's heart, and the meaning behind it made one's imagination run wild. The blood beads condensed again, and Mo Luoyue, who was intact, smiled. There was a sincere smile on her mouth, but Mo Luoyue's methods were extremely ruthless. Her slender hand reached out of her sleeve, and a bloody mist floated out of her palm. It was filled with endless devouring power, as if it wanted to swallow Dustless whole. Rabbit hair needle. Dense, sharp hairs surged out rapidly, heading straight for the red-robed woman's back. They were as sharp as needles, trying to pierce through Mo Luoyue's body. She did not dare to ignore Huiji's existence. Although Mo Luoyue had the ability to defeat Huiji, she did not dare to borrow Huiji's attack with her physical body. Huiji was not as strong as her, but she was also a monster who had reached the level of God. His blood-red eyes flashed with determination as his body exploded, turning into endless blood mist, easily dodging Hui's attack. Heaven's defense. Seeing this, Hui sneered. With a gentle wave of her hand, the world in front of her seemed to be forcibly pulled into a different time and space. A shocking change occurred. Blazing heat spread between heaven and earth, the void turned fiery red, and boiling lava flowed on the ground. It had become a magma space. The scattered droplets of blood emitted a demonic light. Mo Luoyue's figure condensed once again, bringing with it a chilling killing intent. She clenched her jade-like hand into a fist and punched out without hesitation. Boom, boom, boom. As the seemingly ordinary punch landed, the space shattered and the void trembled. A long and narrow crack was blasted open in the horizon. The scattered fist force devoured everything. The power of the aftershock directly pierced through the rolling lava and turned the lava on the ground into nothingness. It was just a casual punch, but the area of destruction reached half the world. Huiji naturally hid in a different space to avoid the limelight. Seems like that strange move that ignores physical attacks is not invincible. She lifted her gaze and stared at the invincible Mo Luoyue who was looking down at Dustless. There was some hope in her hopeless eyes. Strong chakra waves erupted from her body as she rose from the ground. You are courting death. The murderous aura in Mo Luoyue's blood-red eyes exploded. When Mo Luoyue saw Wu Qin charging forward without any fear, a sinister look flashed across her pretty face. There was also a hint of doubt in her eyes. Wu Qin was charging over with his original body this time. He did not use the power of light. Don't worry, I will not kill you so early. I will beat you half to death and then devour you. Mo Luoyue no longer pondered about the reason. Her expression was cold and her seemingly weak fist struck out. No matter what tricks Dustless and Huiji had up their sleeves, it was useless in the face of absolute power. Destructive fist waves rushed out, and the repaired space exploded again with a loud bang. It was extremely terrifying. Divine might. Looking at the destructive fist force calmly, Dustless smiled faintly. His body turned into a whirlpool and swallowed himself into a different space. He easily dodged the whistling fist wave. As the attack missed, the one who suffered was naturally the earth. Accompanied by a loud roar, the devastated earth once again burst open. A ravine that stretched for thousands of miles was clearly visible, dividing the entire world into two halves. 2 ants from a remote village. They are not strong but they have a lot of strange abilities. Seeing this, Mo Luoyue's expression was extremely gloomy. At this moment, she was like a child with infinite strength. Dustless and Huiji were like slippery loaches that could avoid fatal attacks every time. However, after devouring the two of you, I will be able to use all of your strange abilities. Her dark face was full of joy like a blooming flower. It was extremely beautiful. Dustless's light ability was especially attractive to Mo Luoyue. It was even more attractive than Huiji's 10-tailed beast. Suddenly, there was a strange energy fluctuation behind her. It was so weak that it was almost negligible. However, Mo Luoyue, who had an extremely strong perception, still sensed that someone was ambushing her. The space cracked and a figure emerged from the dark ancient space. It was Huiji. I knew that the two of you would attack me from the front and back. What's the use of such a pedantic strategy in front of a god? Stupid. Sensing Huiji attacking from behind, Mo Luoyue revealed a cold smile. At the same time, blood mist floated in her hand and condensed into a dark purple blood blade. How did you heal after being cut in half? I'm really looking forward to this scene. Mo Luoyue smiled evilly. The moment Huiji came close, she turned around and the dark purple blood blade in her hand pierced through Huiji's body. Chapter 383. Mo Luoyue's expression was cold. Huiji had been her archenemy for thousands of years. Of course, she held a disdainful and jealous attitude towards Huiji. She had relied on her own strength to cultivate bitterly, while Huiji had relied on external forces to obtain her strength. She had eaten the fruit of the divine tree to obtain godlike strength and was on par with Mo Luoyue. Even gods had anger, and Mo Luoyue was no exception. At the same time, because of her special physique, as long as she devoured the enemy, she could obtain all the abilities of the other party. Mo Luoyue, who was jealous of Kagaya's ability, began to invade the ninja world, and the war 1,000 years ago began. Kagaya, who relied on external forces to enter the realm of gods, was naturally not Mo Luoyue's opponent and was suppressed. Kagaya had no choice but to use the infinite Tsukimi to resist Mo Luoyue and her subordinates. 1,000 years of grievances and entanglements ends here. Seeing the purplish-red blade pierce through Huiji's body, Mo Luoyue's lips curled up into a smile. Just as she was about to see how Huiji's body was repaired, her eyes widened as she stared at Mo Luoyue in shock. The place where she was cut in half was only emitting a faint golden light. Her body did not split as expected. Instead, it healed as if Dustless used the elemental transformation ability. The only difference was that the ability that should have belonged to Dustless appeared on Kagaya's body. Not good. She was shocked as an unprecedented danger suddenly came. Her body was about to turn into blood mist again to be immune to physical attacks, but it was too late. The ferocious force had already sent her flying. When she swung her sword to attack Kagaya, it meant that she was slower by a beat and couldn't kill her instantly. This also meant that Mo Luoyue was exposed to Kagaya's attack and had no time to dodge. 80 God's air attack. Thousands of fists, filled with Kagaya's anger, bombarded Mo Luoyue's delicate body like a rainstorm. One could clearly see Mo Luoyue's body being smashed into a bloody pulp. Kagaya seemed to feel that it was difficult to get rid of the monstrous hatred in her heart. Her expression was cold, and her pale face was surging with murderous intent like a demon. With a wave of her hand, tens of thousands of rays of light were released. As expected, it's a pretty good ability. That fellow is actually able to bestow his ability on me. Feeling the warm light in her body, that special power made Hui unable to stop. Her face was filled with intoxication. The power of light was something that even gods couldn't control. Now that Dustless had given her this power, she would be letting herself down if she didn't savor it. Naturally, Mo Luoyue became the focus of Hui's attention. The ability to devour, ripples appeared in the void and Dustless flew out. His eyes narrowed slightly as he saw Mo Luoyue being swallowed by the golden light. His expression was one of astonishment and he couldn't help but raise his opinion of Huiji. It's your first time using the glint fruit, yet you're already so familiar with it. You're much stronger than me. Recalling the scene when he used the glint fruit, Dustless's expression was rather awkward. Compared to Kagaya who could control it freely now, there was clearly a difference in dimensions. It doesn't seem to work. With his excellent vision, Dustless could clearly see that an unknown energy emerged from Mo Luoyue's body. She transformed into a deep-sea giant beast and easily swallowed and annihilated the previous light bullets. Like a boulder that fell into the deep sea, there was no more movement. However, Hui's ferocious 80 God's air attack had beaten him black and blue. There were fist marks all over his body. However, since he could be called a god, he definitely wasn't someone who could be easily defeated. Emerald light overflowed from Mo Luoyue's body and covered her entire body. She was full of vitality and was filled with boundless vitality, repairing her body. Her wounds were rapidly healing. Even if it wasn't as good as Huiji's undying body, it wasn't much worse. I can only seal her. Floating in the air, Dustless landed beside Huiji. A cold light flashed in his eyes as he said coldly, even if her body's recovery ability isn't as good as yours, it's still impossible to kill her. Only sealing her is possible. Dustless said solemnly. Although he had used the glint fruit to catch Mo Luoiwe off guard, this kind of unexpected move could only be used once. I have underestimated the two of you. When exactly, after a while, Mo Luoiwe recovered. Her battered body was restored to its original state. Her breathing was stable and she was full of energy. The only difference was that her face was sickly pale and filled with powerlessness. Thinking of how Huiji had trampled on her, her heart was filled with anger. Boom! Raising her hand slightly, energy waves gathered in her palm. Mo Luoiwe punched out mercilessly. The formation was many times more terrifying than before. The void shattered and everything was destroyed. The entire world shook violently. Dustless used his own ability to devour her once again. Huiji had obtained Dustless's glint fruit ability and didn't need to dodge. She just stood there quietly. The aftermath of the attack swallowed Huiji. Her body glowed with a faint golden light and was directly immune to it. Otherwise, she would have been seriously injured if she took the attack head-on. After the tremor, Dustless reappeared from the alternate space and stood side by side with Huiji. Giving your own power to others. Is this your ability? When did it start? Seeing this, Mo Luoiwe's face turned pale. She glared at Dustless and said with a murderous intent. It seemed that if Dustless dared to hide anything, he would be killed on the spot. Do I have to inform you before dealing with you? Black Zetsu couldn't help but mock from within Huiji's sleeve. Dustless didn't say anything. This was the ability of his kaleidoscope's left eye. It could give his own ability to the enemy. The only flaw was that when he gave Huiji the power of the glint fruit, he couldn't activate it himself. Chapter 384. Dustless looked at Marayu with an expressionless face, his heart filled with horror. The strength of this monstrous woman had no limit, and the vigorous and rapidly oppressive aura was clearly rising along with her anger. Their race is very strange. They can endlessly devour the lives of others and turn their abilities into their own. Marayu is a monster that has lived for thousands of years. In her long life of devouring, there must be many capable people who have been devoured by her, Kagaya explained in a deep voice. She knew Marayu far better than Dustless. Dustless nodded slightly. Being able to devour others, turn them into their own blood, and possess their abilities, this kind of innate advantage was indeed unparalleled. It could even be said that she had the same ability as Dustless's system. No matter what, we must seal her. Dustless's expression was cold. Once he and Kagaya were defeated, it meant that the entire ninja world would become this woman's new blood. Dustless was not a saint, and he did not have the heart of a saint. The life and death of people had nothing to do with him, but Dustless regarded Yuluo, Conan, and Hinata as his family. Dragons have reverse scales, and those who touch them will die. Yuluo and the others were Dustless's reverse scales. Seal me. Shameless boasting. Marayu laughed coldly, looking at Dustless with blazing eyes. The ability of light was too perfect. In the face of such an extraordinary being that could resist any heaven-defying ability in the world, no one could maintain a calm heart. Suddenly, a towering shadow covered the sky. Dark clouds covered the sun, and the earth darkened. Looking up, it was Dustless and Kagaya's joint truth-seeking ball. Pouring chakra without holding back would inevitably lead to a change in quality. Dustless and Kagaya's joint truth-seeking ball was naturally extraordinary. The rapidly enlarging truth-seeking ball swallowed the world, destroying all things, and at the same time, space was also being created. Naive. When Mo Luoyue saw this, she did not retreat. Instead, she advanced. Ripples appeared in the void as a red figure shot out. A crimson blood blade condensed in her hand as she casually slashed out. The blood-red light was extremely strange and brutal. Along the way, the space exploded. It was incomparably fragile and pulsated with a demonic luster. The moment it came into contact with the expanding truth-seeking jade, it emitted boundless light and directly swallowed the truth-seeking jade. I told you, this kind of trick is useless. Mo Luoyue chuckled as she exhaled a cold breath. Just as she was about to say something to discourage Dustless and Huey, a thin figure suddenly appeared. Sorry, I didn't expect her to be of any use. Like a ghost, Dustless landed in the void several meters away from Mo Luoyue. At the same time, he said to Huey in a voice that only the two of them could hear, I will find a way to force her back. You will ambush her from the back. When the time comes, I will activate the power of Yang and you will activate the power of Yin to seal her with Chibaku Tensei. Dustless said with a flash of determination and a strange unnatural look in his eyes. You will force her back. Hearing this, Huey's eyes flashed with a strange look. Her tone was filled with doubt. She didn't think that Dustless had the strength to force Mo Luoyue back. There is no need to force yourself. Her gaze fell on Dustless's face. Seeing how determined he was, Huey didn't say anything else. She waved her hand and shattered the space, jumping in without hesitation. Son of a concubine, you think too highly of yourself with your own strength, and at the same time, you look down on me too much. Since you've delivered yourself to my doorstep, then I'll accept your body with disrespect. Mo Luoyue's blood-red eyes flashed with a demonic luster as she stared greedily at Dustless's body. Her gem-like eyes stared at Dustless's body. As long as she devoured Dustless's body, she would be able to obtain everything about Dustless. Bring it on if you can. I promise I won't run or hide. The corners of Wu Chen's lips curled into a smile when he heard this. His calm and indifferent expression disappeared and was replaced by a look of ridicule. His bright and scorching eyes met Mo Luoyue's with a look of ridicule. Anyone could hear the provocation in his voice. You don't know what death is. Hearing this, Mo Luoyue's face fell. Her blood-red eyes were filled with anger. Gods were not to be provoked, especially a mortal like Dustless. Although she didn't like Huey, she was still on the same level as her. The Wuchen in front of him was merely a mortal. I will take everything from you. There is no use in running. Mo Luoyue sneered. A bone-piercing murderous aura seeped out of her body. She was obviously not joking. She moved like the wind and crossed layers of space in an instant. Even though it wasn't a beam of light, just the strength of her body moving forward was not inferior to Dustless's beam of light. In fact, it might even be better. In the blink of an eye, she arrived beside Dustless. See, I didn't run, did I? Seeing Missouri Luoyue close in on him, Dustless said with a smile. There was no trace of chakra either. In the depths of his eyes, there was a hint of slyness and viciousness. Obviously, Dustless had no intention of waiting for death. Are you scared out of your wits and give up resisting? Mo Luoyue frowned and stared at Dustless, who was so close to her. A sneer flashed across her eyes. Her Dustless was much stronger than her. It was normal for her to feel despair or be scared out of her wits. Moreover, at such a close distance, she didn't believe that Dustless had the means to subdue her. It was even more impossible for him to force her. However, even if you give up, I won't let you go. Her white hand approached Dustless. Endless gravitational force surged out, trying to swallow Dustless whole. Bam! Strangely, white smoke suddenly burst out from Dustless's body. Countless more strange figures emerged. Mo Luoyue's face turned ashen when she saw this. The veins on her forehead bulged. She wanted nothing more than to tear Dustless into pieces. However, she did not hesitate to dodge and kick him. Looking up, she saw a group of naked men chasing after Mo Luoyue, as expected. Fortunately, I had the foresight to learn this technique from Uzumaki Naruto in advance. Dustless's lips curled into a smug smile. It was as bright as the stars. He was used to being aloof. It was not impossible for him to be a little shameless. Chapter 385. At the back, Kagaya, who was waiting for the ambush, was stunned. She looked at Mo Luoyue, who was retreating in several naked figures, and her face twitched fiercely. Shameless. With a snort, Kagaya retracted her gaze. Out of sight, out of mind. Her impression of Dustless dropped to negative. It's shameless, but it's very effective. Black Setsu never thought that Dustless would use the legendary ultimate ninjutsu, seduction jutsu. The method was not complementary, but the effect was unusually useful. As long as it was a woman, especially for ambitious gods like Kagaya and Mo Luoyue who were extremely possessive, the way mortals looked at them was a kind of silent blasphemy. Not to mention being surrounded by a group of men who didn't even cover their bodies, it was worse than death. Dustless was also taking advantage of the mentality of these gods who thought highly of themselves. If the other party was an ordinary female ninja with hundreds of battles of nerves, she would most likely choose to ignore them. Whoosh! A sharp sound broke through the air, and in the blink of an eye, a figure swept out. The speed was as fast as lightning, and it went straight to the back of Mo Luoyue. It was Kagaya. Although she scoffed at Dustless's method, at this moment, Mo Luoyue was full of flaws. Such a rare opportunity was fleeting, and there was no reason for her to let it go. She raised her lily-white hand slightly, revealing the pattern of the moon. How can I let you do as you wish? Sensing Kagaya's sneak attack, Mo Luoyue sneered. Strong energy fluctuations erupted from her body, turning into a super-strong hurricane that raged out. The naked men who came out of the seduction jutsu collapsed and were annihilated. The blade-like hurricane didn't intend to stop. Instead, it expanded and swallowed both Dustless and Kagaya, trying to stop the two's plan to surround her. Final struggle. Kagaya and Dustless's eyes flashed with indifference. Kagaya simply used Dustless's glint-glint fruit to ignore the blade storm that enveloped her body. The only difference was that Dustless, who lost the glint-glint fruit, was controlled by the red storm. Looks like your ceiling pincer attack plan has failed. A smile appeared on Mo Luoyue's face. She glanced at the temporarily suppressed Dustless and a smug look appeared in her eyes. Her voice was much more relaxed than before. If I get rid of you first, that brat won't be able to hold the fort alone. You'll be in the bag. Hearing this, a rare faint smile appeared on Huey's indifferent face. She silently raised a finger and pointed behind Mo Luoyue. The haggard figure was clearly visible. Seeing Huey looking at her with a smile that wasn't a smile, Mo Luoyue's smile froze. She turned around suspiciously, only to see that annoying smiling face. Her mouth couldn't help but twitch as her perfect face flushed red. Naturally, it was Dustless. What a shocking move. If it wasn't for Shinwei, I might have really been killed. Pretending to be fearful, Dustless said with a face full of fear. The smile on his face was natural, and it was obvious that he deliberately said that to disgust Mo Luoyue. Staring at Mo Luoyue, Dustless's expression was cold. He raised his right arm, revealing the image of the sun. Huey did the same and attacked Mo Luoyue simultaneously. Chibaku Tensei. The cold voice resounded through the clouds. The two attributes of yin and yang merged together, and everything in the world was reenacted. The world stopped spinning, and everything fell into confinement. In the void, countless mountain fragments appeared out of nowhere and circled around Dustless and Huey. Where there's room for mercy, there's room for mercy. I can swear that I'll never invade this world again. All of her power was imprisoned in an instant. She couldn't mobilize any energy even if she used all of her strength. Mo Luoyue gritted her teeth and put on a pitiful look. She begged Dustless for mercy. As long as you let me go, I can agree to any condition. If I violate this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy me. TSK, even the arrogant Mingyu immortal fairy has such an ugly appearance. Hui mocked and ridiculed, looking at Mo Luoyue with eyes full of disdain. Really? Dustless looked at Mo Luoyue with a smile. Hesitation appeared on his face, as if he was hesitating whether to agree to Mo Luoyue's condition. Are you crazy? Hearing this, Hui's expression changed drastically. She glared at Dustless and suddenly remembered the seduction technique that Dustless cultivated. She gritted her teeth and said, "You are indeed a man with poor taste. An ordinary man will always be an ordinary man. No matter how strong you are, you can't get rid of the human nature hidden in your bones." Hui's eyes flashed with sadness. Dustless was a man that she could barely accept. But now, he was behaving like a hooligan. "Of course, I'm willing to do anything for you, including that kind of thing." She was afraid that Dustless wouldn't understand what she meant. Her face flushed red and her watery eyes were filled with endless charm. She was like a deadly poison. She breathed out and her fragrance spread in all directions. Every frown was soul-stirring and extremely enchanting. "How can I let you take away my chastity after so many years of slimming down? After deceiving you, I will first tear you into pieces." Malice appeared in the depths of Mo Luoyue's eyes as she thought to herself. Her body moved even more vigorously, hoping to draw out Dustless's ugly nature. "Bastard!" Hui shouted angrily. She had been pure for many years and naturally didn't feel anything. But this sworn enemy of hers from 1,000 years ago didn't even flirt with her temporary ally in front of her and ignored her. How could Hui continue to remain calm? This was a covert attempt to smear her reputation. Curvy in the front and back. Long legs. Not bad. Sizing up Mo Luoyue's figure, Dustless nodded inwardly. His eyes were filled with the desire of a wolf. Clearly, he was tempted. Just when Mo Luoyue thought that Dustless would let her off, his words struck her like a bolt of lightning. Her heart was dead silent. "Just like what you've said before, you should spare others when you can. How can I forget the way you wanted to devour me when you were in an advantageous position? Let's bury you together with your ambitions." Chibaku Tensei. As soon as the resolute voice fell, the surrounding mountain fragments rushed over rapidly. Chapter 386. The fragments of the mountain drifted in from all directions, and no creature could escape from the boundless gravitational force. The earth cracked as the fragments rushed toward the gravitational field created by Dustless and Hui Weiji. "Are you really so ruthless and heartless? You're worse than a beast." Mo Luoyue's expression changed drastically as her heart was in turmoil. Her voice was filled with sorrow. An unprecedented god had actually fallen into the hands of two ants. This could be said to be the greatest irony. Even so, Mo Luoyue still hadn't given up on survival. What made him even more speechless was that he hadn't expected that even after he had begged so humbly and was even willing to become a slave, Mo Luoyue still wouldn't let him off. The man in front of her had an indifferent expression and seemed frivolous, but his heart was as cold as an iceberg. When a man is about to die, his words are kind. When a bird is about to die, its cry is sad. How can you be worse than a bird? Also, if I conceal you, I don't think it matters whether you're a beast or not. Dustless retorted with glib words, leaving Mo Luoyue speechless. This was because Mo Luoyue had vowed not to give up until she killed Dustless. Compared to Dustless, who had only sealed her, she was much more of a beast. This was also why Dustless could remain indifferent. I'm not just worse than a bird. Even if I die, I'll drag the two of you down with me so that we can meet in the underworld. A crazed look flashed across Mo Luoyue's eyes as she tore away the facade of humility. Her body, which was under her control, began to emit a strange purple glow of blood. Her entire body shriveled up in an instant, like a candle flickering in the wind. Her hair turned white. Her body was pale and powerless, but there was an indescribable pressure that surrounded Dustless's mind. Ripples appeared in his calm heart as his hair stood on end. Could it be that this fellow is? Black Setsu stared in horror at the purple blood mist emitting from Mo Luoyue's body. His panicked voice was filled with fear. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly retreated. Even though his reaction was extremely fast, Black Setsu's black liquid body was still corroded by the purple blood mist. Whoosh! The white figure retreated in a flash. Of course, it was Kagaya. The Chibaku Tensei that she had painstakingly created also disintegrated in an instant. The mountain fragments that came from heaven and earth fell to the ground again. Old witch, what do you mean? Livid, Dustless glared at Huiji, his killing intent surging. Since Huiji had withdrawn without being pressed, Mo Luoyue had also broken free from the seal. However, Mo Luoyue still maintained a tired expression, giving off the impression of an old man with one foot in the grave. Dustless's heart, which had been in his throat, finally calmed down. Frowning, he suddenly realized that his body was surrounded by a purplish blood-red light. It was filled with an ominous aura. It was the aura that had seeped out from Mo Luoyue's body. Just as he was about to ask Hui why she left, a painful scream resounded through the sky. Ah! Mother, save me! A tormented scream came from Black Setsu's mouth. Dustless felt his scalp go numb when he heard it. If even an iron man like Black Setsu couldn't withstand the torture, one could only imagine how terrifying it was. Looking up, Black Setsu, which was composed of black liquid, had now turned purplish red. Is it because of the purple light from before? Seeing Black Setsu's pained expression, Dustless's expression changed drastically. Recalling the scene of Black Setsu being swallowed by the light, he retreated in an attempt to break free from the purple light. The ideal was beautiful, but the reality was cruel. These strange lights automatically followed and silently entered Dustless's body, no longer moving. It's useless, Black Setsu. You should know what this is. Even I can't do anything about it. Huiji shook her head and decisively threw Black Setsu out of her robes. Her eyes flashed with sadness. Although Black Setsu was not born from her, it was created by the yin-yang escape. So painful. Black Setsu, who had absorbed the purple light, turned purple, like boiling water, horrifying. Those purple lights are all transformed from her pure energy. If it is eroded, not to mention you, even I will explode. Black Setsu was still her child, Huiji said with regret. Bang! After struggling for a few seconds, Black Setsu's body shone brightly, and then it exploded. It didn't heal like before, and it didn't disappear. Damn old witch, you are ruthless, but do you think you can guarantee your safety by scheming against me like this? The corner of his mouth twitched violently. Dustless's murderous intent was awe-inspiring. His expression was gloomy, and he was aware of the sudden restless power in his body. He roared at Huiji, who was gloating. This insidious woman was obviously deliberately trapping Dustless. A man's words are kind when he is about to die, a bird's cry is sad when it is about to die. Dustless, you and I finally fought side by side. How can you be worse than a bird? Ignoring Dustless's malicious words, Huiji said with a smile, returning Dustless's previous words without missing a word. There was no need to be angry with Dustless, who was about to die. Mo Luoyue was also ignored by Huiji. This terrifying move was equivalent to self-destruction. When Dustless died, she also disappeared. Damned old monster. Dustless's face was livid. He could feel the explosive power in his body, the unstoppable power like a volcano, and the violent fluctuations crushed his body tissues and organs. If it wasn't for the fact that he defeated the 6 paths of Beto in the system world and indirectly obtained the power of the 10 tails in his body, Dustless would have been annihilated by the impact. Because of the huge vitality of the 10 tails, his internal organs were healed when they were destroyed. This was also treating the symptoms but not the root cause. If he didn't deal with the violent power in his body, sooner or later, he would be crushed to pieces by this terrifying power like Black Zetsu. Damn it, I only managed to drag one down with me. Looking at Hui Ji unwillingly, Mo Lui's eyes were full of disappointment. Her blood-red eyes were abnormally dim, giving people the feeling that her body was like a willow leaf blown by the wind. Such a terrifying move hurt both the enemy and herself. The power that Mo Luoyue had accumulated for thousands of years was converted into the power of self-destruction. The power was unimaginable. Once it exploded in Dustless's body, the consequences were self-evident. Could it be that I have stepped into the end of my life? Clenching his fists tightly, Dustless took a deep breath. His heart was filled with 100,000 alpacas. Since that strange energy could explode Black Zetsu, he, who had gathered more purple light in his body, couldn't be safe. The end result would be a complete corpse. While he was thinking, the purple light in his body surged like a stormy sea, turning into an endless impact that crushed his limbs and bones. If it wasn't for his strong physique, Dustless's body would have been torn apart in an instant. The burning pain spread to all his nerves. Dustless's expression was abnormally ugly. If he couldn't resist this agitation, he would follow in Black Zetsu's footsteps and disappear without a trace. Boom boom boom, violent vibrations came from within his body. The purple light exploded and continuously attacked Dustless's internal organs, shattering them again and again. Roar roar roar. The scorching attack burned Dustless's rationality. Soon, Dustless's eyes turned scarlet. A low roar similar to the dying struggle of a beast came from Dustless's throat. Staring at Huey with murderous intent, Dustless lost his rationality and turned into a beast that only knew how to kill. As for Mo Luoyue, she had already exhausted her strength and died. In the desolate and strange world, only 2 figures were left standing, Dustless and Huey. Bastard, shouldn't she be exploding? This state is obviously similar to the simple rampaging of power that has lost control. Huey's face was gloomy. She thought that Dustless and Black Zetsu would end up the same, but the scene in front of her was unexpected. Dustless relied on his strong and solid body to temporarily support the rampaging power in his body. You can hold it for a while, but you can't hold it for a lifetime. I want to see what you can do. The heaviness on her face disappeared. Huey looked at Dustless playfully, as if she saw the most interesting thing. A soul-stirring smile appeared on her iceberg face. She was as beautiful as a fairy, but no one could appreciate it. Fend for yourself, forgive me for not accompanying you. After looking at Dustless with pity for a while, Huey shook her head and said faintly. She waved her hand gently and the void in front of her exploded. She stepped into the dark space gracefully. The space gradually closed. Just as it was about to be completely sealed, a black figure invaded. Caw caw caw, the sound of a mirror shattering was suddenly heard. Huey, who was walking in the dark space, was stunned. She stopped in her tracks and turned around subconsciously. What she saw was Dustless with his scarlet eyes. Impossible, he tore the void with his bare hands. How? Bang! Before she finished her sentence, Huey's body was blasted out like a cannonball. The powerful force shook the heavens and the earth, and the entire dark space trembled violently. Caw caw caw, the blue sky exploded. A figure with long silver hair was thrown out of thin air. His body flew back for thousands of feet before he could stop. Huey's face was filled with disbelief as she stared at her sunken chest. Could this guy be controlling Maluyu's power? Huey's throat moved unconsciously. Her eyes were filled with shock and fear. Looking at the deep fist mark on her chest, she retreated instinctively. Dustless's body flew out of the dark space. With a wave of his hand, the space shattered. Dustless's scarlet eyes stared at Huey. His murderous intent spread out like tidal waves. In fact, it was the same as Huey's guess. Dustless was indeed controlling Maluyu's power temporarily. Of course, it could not be considered as complete control. The fact that it went berserk explained everything. Wuchen was only relying on his strong physical body to temporarily control the power of Maluyu. When he was exhausted, it would be the moment when he would be separated forever. Time was of the essence. He had to disperse the majestic power as soon as possible, and Huey was the most suitable target. There's something wrong with his eyes. Based on a woman's intuition, Huey instinctively felt that something was wrong. If Dustless was filled with murderous intent before, his eyes now had a different meaning. That kind of aggressive gaze contained the most primitive ambition of humans. Huey was not affected by worldly affairs, but it did not mean that she did not know what it meant. The purest and most direct possessiveness. Go to hell. Huey, who was shocked and furious, wanted to tear Dustless into pieces. The reincarnation Sharingan on her forehead released endless murderous intent. The mysterious Magatama rotated and twisted. The power of her eyes went wild and the world in front of her started to change. The unfamiliar world was empty and lifeless. It looked ordinary, but it was obviously different. Dustless and Huey's bodies seemed to be carrying millions of pounds of boulders. They fell to the ground and could not move. Dustless and Huey were the same. Without a doubt, this technique was the gravity space of the defense of heaven. Kill gray bones together. Two sharp bone spurs emerged from the palms of his hands, and pierced straight towards Wuchen. Everything that came in contact with them would be annihilated in an instant. Woo-woo, a strange sound came from the corner of his mouth, mocking Huey's powerlessness. Dustless shot out a blood mist from his hand and the bone blades collapsed in the blink of an eye. Freak. Seeing this, Huey cursed. Her hair danced and turned into countless sharp thorns. Just as she was about to pierce Dustless into a sieve, a black shadow completely ignored the existence of gravity and rushed over like lightning. He stretched out his hand and easily subdued Huey. You're courting death. Feeling that her white and tender hand was grabbed by Wuchen, Kagaya became angry out of shame, and her chakra raged out like a flood, hoping to force Wuchen to retreat in his berserk state. It's useless. My current state was created by you. Dustless returned to normal and said to Huey with a hoarse voice. However, his body was still trembling. It was obvious that he only regained his rationality temporarily. Let go of me, or else you'll have to bear the consequences. Avoiding Dustless's gaze, Huey warned fiercely. Several truth-seeking jade floated behind her, indicating that she was not joking. How you treat me is your own business. But I'm in this state because of you. You have to help me solve it. Dustless said firmly, I don't want to die now, so I can only borrow your body to help me solve the problem. Although I'm sorry, I hope you can only blame yourself. Seeing that Huey was not tactful, Dustless said straightforwardly. I'm the goddess of Mao. How can I agree with you? Her eyes were filled with anger that could burn the world. Huey was extremely regretful. If she had told Dustless in advance, he would not have been swallowed by the power of Maluyu and would not have gone berserk. She had shot herself in the foot. It's not up to you to choose. Your only mission now is to use the power of Yin to help me solve this restless power in my body. Dustless said expressionlessly. His meaning was simple and clear. To put it bluntly, it was a double XIU. He didn't feel guilty at all. This was Huiji's own doing and she couldn't blame anyone else. Hui was about to refute Dushless when an energy wave came. Suddenly, she felt cold. She did not know when she was exposed to the air. Dustless did not care about what Hui was thinking. He pounced on her. The restless energy wave in his body made him uncomfortable and almost made his body explode. He had to find a suitable person. Chapter 387. Time passed unknowingly, and the Shinobi World War in the outside world also stopped. The Shinobi Allied forces and the White Zetsu army were all wiped out. Both Hinata and Cheyenne had Tensigen, and Cheyenne and Conan, as well as Red Lotus, were extraordinary. Especially with the help of the corpses of the Hokage, a team of less than 10 people defeated the Shinobi Allied forces and the White Zetsu army in one fell swoop. Dustless and the different space naturally didn't know about this. At this moment, his consciousness was half asleep and half awake, and he seemed to hear a slight sobbing sound. After an unknown period of time, Wu Chen, who was in a daze, finally woke up. Turning his head and staring at Kagaya with a delicate face beside him, Dustless's eyes were filled with a strange color. He seemed to think of something, and the corner of his mouth twitched fiercely. He couldn't wait to slap himself in the face. Staring at the dazzling blood stains on the ground, Dustless knew that Kagaya, this big pit, will be his back from now on. But this old monster, she is quite beautiful. Looking at Huiji's delicate little face, Wuchen couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. Her skin was like ice and her bones were like jade. She was like a peerless fairy who had fallen from the ninth heaven. Kagaya was a monster for thousands of years. Because of the body of the sacred tree, she was immortal and indestructible, and the years did not leave a trace on her body. Moan. As if sensing the gaze of others, Hui rubbed the corner of her pale eyes. Her entire body was weak. It was obvious that even though she was a divine tree, she couldn't withstand Wuchen's continuous attacks. After a long while, her bright eyes opened completely, revealing a little confusion and hesitation. Her gaze fell on Wuchen. Her expression was neither happy nor sad, and she didn't say anything. The words at the tip of his tongue were stuck. Wuchen originally wanted to curse out loud. If it wasn't for Huiji taking the opportunity to trick him, this situation wouldn't have happened. Later on, this kind of melodramatic thing wouldn't have happened. It was Kagaya's fault, but Dustless, after all, forcibly took her virginity, and he was not qualified to blame others. Kagaya looked at Dustless faintly, and her eyes were as calm as water. Then she retracted her gaze and waved her hand gently, and her body was wrapped in a simple robe. Thinking of Dustless's ferocious offensive, her eyes flashed with anger. You'd better not tell anyone about this, otherwise. Humph. The majestic murderous aura overflowed out of her body, and Kagaya warned him sternly. From her expression, it was not difficult to see that if she was not afraid of Dustless's strength, she would definitely be prepared to fight to the death. In fact, Hui's heart was extremely conflicted. Even if her strength was really comparable to Dustless, she might not be able to raise her butcher's knife when facing him again. You can let bygones be bygones, but I have something to say. There are some things that must be agreed upon in advance. Staring at Kagaya, Dustless said. His tone was quite soft, but it was unusually firm, and there was no room for disobedience. His tone was resolute and unshakable. Hearing this, Kagaya's face was livid, and she stared at Dustless with uncertainty. The surging murderous aura broke out of her body like a tide. She didn't expect Dustless to be so insatiable. She didn't haggle over every little thing, but Dustless took advantage of her. Don't show an angry expression. Your ambition has not been terminated, and it's normal for me to be worried about you. Looking into Kagaya's eyes, Dustless said bluntly. His tone was direct, and he was too lazy to hide it. Even if he had such a relationship with Kagaya, Dustless did not let down his guard and would not let Kaguya do whatever she wanted. Shameless. Clenching her teeth, Kaguya glared at Dustless. Looking at Dustless's calm face, a strange light flashed in her eyes. Her tone was as cold as a mountain as she said sarcastically, "I am a supreme existence above thousands of creatures. Why would I need to live under someone else's roof? You don't have the right to choose." Looking at Kaguya with a smile, Dustless said softly, "No matter what happened before, you are just a canary in my cage. And just now, the double, cough cough, you seem to have gotten a lot stronger." Embarrassment flashed in his eyes. Dustless, who wanted to directly talk about dual cultivation, hurriedly changed the topic and said to Kaguya in a daze. The corner of Kaguya's mouth twitched fiercely, and she glared at Dustless with a piercing gaze. Her indifferent face was like a hoodlum's at this moment, and it was especially annoying. Being a status is similar to being a little girl in bed. Of course, there is an essential difference. Her words almost made Kaguya vomit blood. She didn't remember that she wanted to rely on Dustless, especially Dustless, her mortal enemy, took her most important thing. She couldn't wait to tear him into pieces. Of course, it's not without benefits. Looking at Kaguya, a strange light flashed in his eyes. Dustless said faintly, "I can allow you to get the chakra of everyone in the world except my wife and my subordinates. War is cruel, and it's difficult to describe it with words. The injured are often the lowest level of civilians. The casualties are countless. Many ninjas, including the 5 Kages, were seriously injured by the ninjas reincarnated by Kabuto. The shinobi world was full of corpses." With Dustless's permission, Kaguya didn't hesitate to reunite the scattered chakra of the world, and her strength increased sharply. She finally felt a little grateful to Dustless. As Madara said before, chakra is the source of the world's turmoil. Without this superhuman power, the world is unusually stable. Although fights happen from time to time, and bloodshed is constant, it's much more peaceful than before. It's time to leave. Stimulated by Mara Yuki, Dustless's heart was not limited to this world, and his eyes looked at the world outside the universe, where the world was brighter. People's curiosity is endless, and Dustless is also full of yearning for the mysterious outer space. As for Kaguya, Haruo, and other women, Dustless naturally took them all, including Terumi Mei and Tsunade Senju. They were all seriously injured in the war, and the 2 of them were inextricably linked to Dustless. Of course, all of them were sealed in the system space. Chapter 388. Luxurious and quiet, in a luxurious villa inlaid with all kinds of shining gems, on a soft, furry bed, there was a pale, black-haired teenager. This person has a handsome face, delicate facial features, and sharp edges. The only difference is that the young man's dress is not flattering. It looks a bit nondescript and weird. However, this strange dress is enough to make all human beings fear and look up. It hurts. After a long time, the black-haired teenager opened his eyes and stared at the luxurious ceiling. He opened his mouth and a stab of pain poured into his mind. The teenager's face was pale. A huge amount of information invaded his mind and turned into a real picture reflected in his pupils. Royce South, Saint. What kind of idiotic name is this? The voice of surprise and doubt resounded through the empty villa. Anyone could hear the astonishment in the tone and subconsciously looked at the clothes he put on. Sure enough, it's a celestial dragon. After about a while, the teenager's mouth raised a bitter smile. He was speechless and immediately understood which world he had come to. Dustless, there is no need to complain. Although this identity is notorious, the privileges are envied by others. In his mind, the dissatisfied voice of System Ling spread, scolding Dustless for not knowing what was good for him. The identity of a celestial dragon in this world is equivalent to the existence of nuclear weapons. Not to mention ordinary civilians, even the kings of some countries, and even the admirals of the navy, are afraid of the celestial dragon. Forget it, this problem is not important, but Dustless rubbed his temples, feeling rather conflicted. Then, he said speechlessly, I didn't expect the Lois family to be so tragic. Their members are so thin that they are almost extinct. Now, I'm the only one left. Through the memories in his mind, Dustless knew that he was the last child of this Royce family. As a descendant of 20 kings, the identity of a celestial dragon can be imagined. However, the Royce family, which has a history of hundreds of years, is now only supported by Dustless alone. The rest of the family members have all died out. Now Dustless's identity is also a 16 or 17-year-old teenager. Of course, Dustless's appearance has not changed at this stage. There's also a fiancé that I've never met. Dustless's expression froze as he delved deeper into his memory. His body twitched a few times, and he could not help but think of the ferocious-looking fat woman who wore a bubble mask and had a big fat belly. His entire body began to tremble uncontrollably. This is interesting. I didn't expect that the celestial dragons, who are called the biggest garbage by human beings, also have a different kind of existence. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, and his face showed a surprised expression. Dustless said with a little surprise. Celestial dragons were also synonymous with trash in his eyes, but the special information in his mind made Dustless frown. There seemed to be something wrong with this world as well. It was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. Who would have thought that my deceased father was actually a great general? Dustless's calm face was heavy, and his tone was slightly doubtful. Not only his deceased father, but even some of his so-called relatives had extraordinary strength. It was the opposite of the garbage that had no strength to truss a chicken. On second thought, Dustless was relieved. As the saying goes, one pole can't kill a group of people. Celestial dragons were indeed garbage, but there were also extraordinary different kinds of existence, such as people like Doflamingo. It seems that celestial dragons still have many unknown secrets, and there are things that the world government is afraid of. After about a long while, Dustless secretly speculated. The status of celestial dragons was higher than the Gorosei. If the identity of the descendant of the Creator alone made the world government submit for hundreds of years, it would be unreasonable. The celestial dragons claim to be gods. Naturally there are some unknown secrets. The 5 elder stars are also ambitious people. If the celestial dragons are a group of wine sacks, how can they bow their heads and be willing to be at the disposal of the celestial dragons? The light voice spread out, and the person who spoke was the system Ling. She continued, this world is very mysterious. You have to be careful. The 20 kings unified the world 800 years ago, and it was not just by talking. Whether it is the world government, marine headquarters, or even the entire human race, they are extremely disgusted with celestial dragons because they have absolute privileges above all creatures. If someone attacks celestial dragons, a marine admiral will come out. So what? Creak, walking to the window and pushing it open, the cool evening breeze immediately came out. Dustless walked to the balcony and quietly looked down at the Holy Land, Mariewa under the night view. The giant building in front is the residence of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, the world's highest power. The evening wind blew his hair messy like grass. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. If people offend me, I will pay them back 100 times. The voice of the ancient well spread out, staring at the castle-like building in the distance. Dustless said very plainly. He was not interested in the secrets of celestial dragons, including the Mariewa national treasure, that is enough to shock the world. Living behind the scenes and turning the world upside down, this is barely the only pleasure of Dustless. Royce South, Saint, it's time for dinner. A voice of fear and horror sounded from the room. Dustless was slightly stunned and turned his head. What came into his eyes was a young girl. She was delicate and pretty, but her watery eyes were full of fear. She didn't even dare to raise her head, and there was a black special shackle around her neck. Obviously, she is Dustless's slave. "Kid, what's your name?" Turning his head and continuing to look at the waves in the distance, Dustless asked curiously. The girl he met for the first time had a feeling of déjà vu. My name is Boya Hancock." Lowering her head, she didn't dare to look at Dustless's back. She suppressed the fear in her heart and lowered her voice. "The laws that punish mortals have no effect on celestial dragons who are gods." Chapter 389. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with understanding, the corners of his mouth raised slightly, and he looked at Boa Hancock with interest, his eyes as sharp as an eagle's. After a moment of silence, Dustless's eyes dimmed. The future empress was now just a mortal, and there was nothing worthy of Dustless's attention. To put it bluntly, she was just an ant. In Dustless's words, she was extremely mediocre, without any bright spots. Even if she had eaten the devil fruit now, Dustless did not see anything special. Just glancing at Boa Hancock, Dustless left straight away, ignoring her. The room was brightly lit, the slender mahogany table was filled with all kinds of delicacies, and there were countless dazzling dishes. Staring at the dazzling array of food and delicacies, Dustless also had a big appetite for a while. When he was about to open his stomach to eat and drink, the roaring sound resounded through the sky. Boom boom boom, under the cover of the dark night, the serene Mariewa burst into flames, the earth shook, and the aftermath spread to a wider area than ever before. Flames of hundreds of feet rose in the air, and the quiet void instantly turned fiery, burning unscrupulously. The temperature of the void increased by dozens of times, melting all the buildings into a solution. Just after the blink of an eye, the shouts of killing connected together. "This is interesting." After swallowing the food that was sent to his mouth, the majestic perception spread out, and he noticed that there were suddenly many rioting slaves in the usually quiet Mariewa. He frowned, and doubts inevitably rose in his heart. So that's how it is it the date 16 years ago, when Mariewa was invaded? With a strange smile at the corner of his mouth, Dustless wiped his hands, and a look of enlightenment flashed in his eyes. The only person who invaded Mariewa in the world was the master of the Murlocs, Fisher Tiger. He is quite bold to dare to invade Mariewa. His fingers gently tapped on the long mahogany table, making a rhythmic sound. Dustless directly took a nap, turning a deaf ear to the outside disturbance, and the thoughts in his mind began to turn. How can a clown have the ability to invade Mariewa, but a half-baked person with a bounty of more than 200 million berries? Even if he once knew Mariewa, it is impossible for him to have the ability to invade. When he opened his eyes again, Dustless was full of doubts. A criminal with a bounty of about 200 million berries, his strength is only about the level of an ordinary Marine vice-admiral, and even worse than a vice-admiral in Marine. There is something strange, there must be a conspiracy. There was a strange color in his eyes, and Dustless's heart was splashed with ripples. He remembered that Tiger's bounty was 230 million berries, which was the bounty after he successfully liberated the slaves. Now he is just an unknown character who has not yet been offered a bounty. Even if he has the strength comparable to a Marine vice-admiral, it is not justifiable for Mariewa to be invaded so simply. Bang bang bang, when Dustless was thinking about it, a rush of footsteps suddenly came from the dark corridor. Looking up, several big men in black suits hurried over. They could not wait to surround and protect Dustless. "Louis South, Saint, Mariewa has been invaded, we will escort you away now." The man in sunglasses, who was obviously the leader of this group of people, said with eagerness, and even Dustless did not speak and directly dragged him away. "Where are you taking me? Have other 10 Ryubito also been taken?" With an indifferent look, Dustless's voice was magnetic, not as grumpy as other 10 Ryubito, not knowing etiquette, and giving people the feeling that it was more like a casual conversation between friends. Several big men were stunned. The arrogance and unreasonableness of Tenryubito was known all over the world. The man in front of them was surprisingly calm and gave people a very amiable feeling. Yes, Louis South, Saint, many other Tenryubito were also secretly protected. The slaves who broke out of the prison slaughtered Tenryubito wantonly. The man in the suit with glasses said, these slaves were oppressed all year round, and their hatred for Tenryubito was self-evident. Once they were liberated, they would inevitably fight against Tenryubito. Is it? Hearing this, Wu Chen's face flashed with a cold light, and a glaring killing intent swept out. A tyrannical repulsive force broke out from his body, and the black-clothed men who clustered around Wu Chen were instantly sent flying. Their bones were broken, their internal organs were dislocated, their eyes were dim, they lost their luster, and they were dying. They looked at Dustless incredulously. It's funny, don't you think so? Sitting back again, Dustless looked at the half-dead people lying on the ground, and the corners of his mouth raised, showing a contemptuous smile. Mariewa is really the darkest place, and the strategy of killing with a borrowed knife is a set of tricks. Louis South, Saint, what are you talking about? We don't understand what you mean. A group of big men with sunglasses looked at Dustless in confusion, and even the repulsion that Dustless exerted was out of the sky, and they looked at Dustless with puzzled doubts. Don't understand. That's natural. Sitting down leisurely, Wu Chen once again enjoyed his wine and delicacies. He ignored the existence of these people and said, if you guys knew the inside story, perhaps your heads would have been separated from your body. Of course, it is precisely because you will never understand the reason that you are destined to be a worm crawling at the bottom for the rest of your life. After that, Dustless did not wait for several people to react, and his whole body surged with repulsion, and all the matter centered on himself was annihilated and collapsed, turning into dust and disappearing. With Fisher Tiger's strength, even if he used to be a slave of Tenryubito and is familiar with the geographical structure of Mariewa, he has no ability to invade the Holy Land. He is still too far away. There must be a secret existence that no one knows. Chapter 390. At noon night, the whole world was peaceful. Only the center of power in the world, Mariewa, was playing out another cruel scene at this moment. The released slaves raised their butcher's knife to the celestial dragons. After several years of oppression, they had already lost their minds. The only thing they wanted to do was to kill these celestial dragons who tortured them all day long to vent their hatred. This is interesting. Years of oppression have made you crazy enough to forget where this is. On the balcony, Dustless looked down at the chaotic field below and tasted the red liquid in the wine glass. The celestial dragons were obviously not as good as these slaves. Even if there were people in the government protecting these vermin, there were celestial dragons lying in a pool of blood. In the room where Dustless was, the smell of blood was overwhelming. Looking back, many broken limbs were clearly visible, and their pupils were frightened and dazed. It was obvious that they were cruelly dismembered on the spot without even reacting. It was not difficult to see from the shocked eyes that they did not believe that the celestial dragons in front of them, who were called the biggest garbage by human beings, had such terrifying strength that they could kill them with a wave of his hand. They did not even have time to react or defend. Vulgar. A bloody light flashed in his eyes. Wu Chen resolutely turned around and walked into the room. Human nature was fickle, and the world was fickle. He was not so bored to save those so-called people of the same race. Bang bang bang, the sound of hurried and messy footsteps came again. Dustless frowned, and the murderous aura flashed away. He suddenly raised his arm and went straight to the dark corridor in front of him. Chakras surged, and an unparalleled repulsive force came out of the palm of his hand. Boom! The murderous slave was suddenly torn apart, and his body burst like a water bowl. Dustless's face gradually became cold. These slaves came one after another endlessly. In less than a quarter of an hour, he had killed dozens of them. Killing with a borrowed knife, it's a good plan. Looking far away and staring at the beautiful building outside the window, Dustless said with admiration. The people who lived there were the highest power in the world, the 5 elder stars. What is Marihoa? The home of Tenryubito, the residence of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and the location of the commander-in-chief of the world government, including the headquarters of many intelligence departments such as CP0, CP9, are all in Mariewa, which can be said to be a gathering of strong people. It was outrageous that a mere fisher tiger had made such a mess of Mariewa. Killing with a borrowed knife. Don't tell me you suspect that the 5 honored stars did this on purpose. A light voice sounded in his mind. Naturally, it was Ling, the consciousness of the system, doubting Dustless's guess. I'm not sure about this. Although I'm just guessing, in terms of ability, Tiger has no ability to invade Mariewa at all. Even if he has been a slave for a few years and knows Mariewa like the back of his hand, he does not have this ability. Shaking his head, Dustless said with some hesitation. There are countless strong people in Mariewa, more than the strong people in Marine headquarters, and their strength is also better. Not to mention Fisher Tiger, even if the Pirate King Roger and Whitebeard join forces to attack Mariewa, they may be besieged to death. After all, the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and the commander-in-chief of the army, as well as the strong people of CP0, CP9 are all here. To some extent, the incident of this raid is like a deliberate move, deliberately opening the road for Fisher Tiger to easily invade Mariewa. Mariewa is the center of the world's power, and its defense can be imagined. The probability of Tiger, who is only at the vice admiral level, invading is 0. Is it really okay for us to do this? It's tantamount to slapping our own face. Tomorrow, the news of Mariewa being invaded will spread all over the world, and it will be talked about again. In the brightly lit room, 5 figures with different expressions were clearly visible, and the one who spoke was a bald old man with a long sword in his hand and glasses. This person gives people an extremely awe-inspiring feeling, even if it's just a look, there is an invincible sharpness. That's the only way. The plan has been implemented. Anyway, we have lost a lot of face over the years. If we can clear some garbage, it can be regarded as a benefit to all mankind, the old man with a little red skin and neat blonde hair said with a tone of indifference. It was worth it to kill some garbage to purify the air. This has nothing to do with us. The old man with long white hair and a long beard shook the coffee cup in his hand and said, Fishman Tiger was originally a slave of those guys. He escaped by chance a few years ago. Now it's reasonable for him to go back and retaliate against Tenryubito. Even if Tenryubito accuses us, he can't say anything to us. The crime of dereliction of duty is a fact. The group of people who let Tiger sneak in deliberately will be secretly removed, so that there will be no evidence, and by the way, the whole crime will be pushed to the Fishman Island. The old man with a sword who spoke first said with a murderous aura. His whole person was full of a cold death aura. The meaning revealed in his words was that he couldn't wait to tear Tenryubito into pieces. In fact, the relationship between Tenryubito and the 5 elder stars was not so harmonious. The 5 elder stars did not belong to Tenryubito, but they were subject to the supreme orders of Tenryubito. As the concentration of the highest power in the world, the 5 of them listened to the orders of a group of good-for-nothings, which was the biggest insult. Tenryubito relied on the identity of the descendant of the creator to act recklessly, lawlessly, and buy and sell slaves in broad daylight. It could be said that they were the biggest source of turmoil in the world. However, for some special reason, they couldn't do anything to these garbage. They were really unwilling. Now that Tiger was willing to take the initiative to attack, they, the 5 elder stars, were naturally willing to help Tiger realize his beautiful wish. Since they couldn't do it openly, they could only stab a knife in the dark. Anyway, all the blame would be borne by Tiger and the fishmen he brought. Chapter 391. It is also human nature for the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, to hate Tenryubito so much. When they preach the justice of the world, they still shelter the most vicious people, Tenryubito. This is tantamount to slapping their own face. This can't be helped. That group of people has a rich background and is not as simple as it seems. We can only use this method to vent our anger for the time being. Wearing a black suit, white curly hair, and a flat hat. The old man with a scar on the left side of his face said with a complicated melancholy in his tone. His dry face had a helpless smile, and it seemed that he was trying to find joy in the bitterness. Tenryubito is not as simple as it seems. It has been passed down for more than 800 years and has a rich heritage. For countless years, it is not that no one has tried to take advantage of them, but in the end, they all failed. For more than 800 years, Tenryubito is by no means as useless as the world thinks, even the status of the 5 of them is not as good as the former. They are the biggest bugs, much more abominable than the ferocious pirates. They are unscrupulous in the cloak of justice, and they are lawless when they fight. The old man with the sword snorted, and the murderous look in his eyes was abnormal. If the pirates do evil, no one dares to say anything about the Tenryubito who claims to be God killing people and arson. There is no other reason, because Tenryubito has privileges. Mariehua's fire was monstrous, the smell of blood was lingering, and the black smoke was nearly 10 feet high, full of despair, giving people a suffocating feeling of purgatory on earth. Those Tenryubito who are secretly controlled by the world government, I am afraid that they will be quietly disposed of, sad. Looking indifferently at the distant void, Wuchen murmured to himself without any ripples. This was also the price of their tyrannical life. There was a cause, and there was an effect. There was no reason to let it go like this. The means of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, are extremely ruthless. They dare to plot against their master. In his mind, the system consciousness Ling sighed. Judging from various factors, Tiger does not have the strength to invade Mariehua. Mariehua has countless strong people, and Tiger is just a chestnut in the sea. The Gorosei, are all powerful and ambitious people, and they have the world government and many departments, such as a powerful organization like the Marine. They are willing to be the dogs of the celestial dragons. Shaking his head, Dustless concluded that people's ambition grows with the expansion of strength. No one wants to be inferior to others. Whether it is accidental or inevitable, it shows that the Gorosei is ambitious and unwilling to be inferior to the celestial dragons. They have guts. How dare they steal from me? Dustless's words were suddenly stuck in his throat as he changed the topic. His cold eyes stared into the depths of the darkness as a cold smile appeared on his face. The powerful eye power in his eye sockets exploded, rapidly oppressing. Looking up, Dustless was covered in frost as he walked expressionlessly into the dark space. In the dark and silent space, a few blurry figures moved nimbly. These monsters were different from humans. They were ugly and unbearable to look at. Some of them even had more than a dozen arms. Little girl, I will unlock the shackles for you. From now on, you are free and no longer a slave of the celestial dragons. The burly red-skinned man revealed a kind smile. He looked at the chain that he had taken from the girl's head, and a trace of hatred flashed in his eyes. With a powerful shake, he directly shattered the chain into lime-like fragments. Looking closely, the girl who was rescued was the later famous Empress Boa Hancock. Boss Tiger, there seems to be something wrong here. Looking at the dark red blood stains under his feet, the blue-skinned monster frowned and said with a heavy tone of depression and puzzlement. The dark corridor in front of him smelled of blood, and the blood under his feet came from there. Jinbi, it's really wrong. The people who died here seem to be slaves who were released before. After a long silence, Tiger said heavily. His heart sank. As everyone knew, celestial dragons were trash without the strength to truss up a chicken, and most of the slaves were powerhouses with strong physiques. Slaughtering celestial dragons was a piece of cake. Let's leave here first. I'm afraid the government sent strong people to do this. Only their minions have this strength. With a sigh, although he was unwilling, there were still a large number of slaves who had not been rescued. Tiger could only choose to leave. It was a luck to be able to invade Mariewa. Mariewa is the nest of the world government. No matter how negligent the defense is, it can't be invaded, so Tiger can only plan himself as a lucky person. Go? I actually thought that you guys would be able to leave. An indifferent voice suddenly resounded in the empty hole. The abrupt voice was extremely soft and lazy, as if mocking Tiger and the others for overestimating themselves. In short, there was a kind of silent ridicule. Who is it? Get out of here, don't pretend to be a ghost. After a while, seeing that no one had appeared, the shark-faced young man couldn't help but roar angrily. Arlong, shut up. Jinbi glared at Arlong with dissatisfaction, and the irritation on his face disappeared in a flash. He nervously observed the wind and grass around him. The enemy hidden in the dark was the most dangerous. Strange. That seems to be the voice of Lois South, sage. The future empress was full of doubts. She tilted her head and shook her head after a moment of contemplation. The celestial dragons were all fat and incompetent idiots in the eyes of the world. The previous unfathomable voice could not be a celestial dragon. They did not have that ability. Boom! A gorgeous golden light fell from the sky, piercing the roof and forming a big hole. Countless photons gathered and drilled in, floating like fireflies. This strange scene made all the fishmen stunned, and they looked at each other. Suddenly, the light quickly gathered and condensed, and a vague figure formed. Chapter 392. Warm photons wandered in the dark space, the hall was full of light, and the bright luster turned the night into day. The Murlocs present looked at the figure floating in the air. Ability user, Tiger's face was gloomy. He clenched his fist and subconsciously covered his eyes with his hand. The burning flash was as dazzling as the sun, making him unable to open his eyes. Is this the Shining Man? Through the tiny gap between his fingers, Tiger widened his eyes and looked incredulously at the figure condensed in the air. The flashing light was like a miniature sun. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was the Shining Man. Under everyone's surprised gaze, the figure slowly formed. Celestial Dragon. Staring at the strange dress, the fishmen all along exclaimed. This kind of special dress, only the celestial dragons in the world would wear it and swagger through the streets. So it was also one of the symbols of celestial dragons. After a short time, the face of the visitor finally flashed. He stood casually in the sky, his deep eyes were as bright as stars, and his messy hair was dancing with the wind. His face was white, his facial features were angular, his body was thin, and his dry and cracked mouth was slightly raised, revealing a faint smile. Is this guy really a celestial dragon? Jinbi, who recovered from his shock, looked sluggish with some doubt. The celestial dragons all had pig waists and fat faces, especially the males, they were all like this. One must know that celestial dragons were synonymous with god-level ugly men. The celestial dragon in front of him was the complete opposite. It was fundamentally different from those useless garbage. A celestial dragon that could shine like the sun and even float strangely in the air was unheard of and unheard of. Lois Nand, Saint Boa Hancock, who was nearly 15 or 16 years old, trembled. Her face was pale, and her quiet eyes were filled with fear. She said the true identity of Dustless. Sure enough, it was a celestial dragon. Tiger and others looked at each other, and their eyes were relaxed. The celestial dragon ate the devil fruit not to fight, but to have fun. It's a pity, the devil fruit that can be eaten by the celestial dragon is certainly not an ordinary thing. Tiger's eyes flashed with a touch of sadness. If it was an unknown fruit, celestial dragons would generally let the slaves they bought eat it. The devil fruit in front of them could float in the air, and the golden light just now showed that it was not an ordinary thing. The good fruit is eaten by the pig. The young and vigorous fishman all along took a step forward and hooked his thumb at Wu Qin. He said contemptuously, "Boy, since you've seen our true faces, you'll definitely die. Do you want to kill yourself or let me help you dismember your body?" An arrogant voice, Arlong sneered. The reason why celestial dragons can be arrogant is because of the protection of the Marine Admiral. Without it, they are just the most incompetent waste. At least Arlong and Tiger, as well as other people, think so. Without the protection of the Marine, celestial dragons will become sheep waiting to be slaughtered. However, Dustless's eyes directly ignored the arrogant Arlong. His indifferent eyes fell on Boa Hancock's face. He pointed to her and said with a smile, "You are bold enough. Although I don't care about a slave, but if I let you take her away like this, where will my face go? Why don't you leave one of you to save my face in exchange for her life?" The indifferent pupils were replaced by a playful color. Dustless's face was full of ridicule. He didn't feel anything special about the so-called Empress. "Trash dares to talk big, why don't you come down and die?" Arlong's face was ferocious. Dustless's direct ignoring of him had aroused his anger. Now this celestial dragon waste dared to speak arrogantly, which completely angered him. Countless blood vessels gushed out of his frightening eyes, and the strength of his whole body was operating to the limit. His pupils stared at Dustless, and his legs were slightly bent down to continue his strength. Worthy of being a fishman, this power is really not a cover. Dustless nodded slightly, and then also pointed at Arlong on the ground with his finger, full of provocation, contemptuous eyes looking at the trash not worth mentioning. "Tear you apart, whiz." An angry roar fell, accompanied by a boom sound. The floor under Arlong's feet also shattered into foam, and his strong body rose from the ground and roared like a cannonball. The corner of his mouth opened, and a fishy smell came out, revealing Sawtooth full of fangs, jumping with cold light. It was not difficult to see that he was going to completely tear Dustless to pieces. There is a road to heaven but you don't take it, there is no door to hell but you throw yourself into it. Lifting his right foot gently, Wu Qin shook his head hopelessly as he looked at Arlong who was galloping towards him. His expression was cold and dull. The light on his leg gathered, and after a while, it turned into a dazzling pure gold. A lazy voice resounded in the dark hall. "Speed is weight, have you ever been kicked at the speed of light?" It seems that I asked superfluous questions. It is an honor for clowns like you to enjoy the taste of light. As the voice fell, Dustless's golden leg also fell mercilessly. Boom, 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 the figure that jumped into the air was cruelly suppressed. He was directly kicked down by Dustless and heavily smashed into the ground. The valiant force directly caused the entire floor to burst open, forming an incomparably huge deep pit. Arlong, who was burnt all over, was lying in it without any breath. Arlong! Seeing this, Tiger's eyes were about to crack, and his huge iron fist was clenched tightly. Fishmen valued easy things, and the passionate him valued the bond between them even more. Idiot, instead of worrying about him, you should worry about your own situation. A ghostly voice resounded behind him. Tiger's pupils widened, and his whole body was cold. He suddenly looked back and saw Dustless with a strange smile on his face. Of course, there was also his shining finger. Chapter 393. The tiny golden luster is not beautiful, the luster is gentle, it looks harmless, not worth mentioning, and it gives people a feeling of no danger. However, Tiger, who was locked, felt a strong force that wanted to penetrate him. Under the shroud of death, Tiger was uncharacteristically calm and natural, and he made his strongest defense in an orderly manner. This young Tenryubito is obviously extremely experienced. His rough skin suddenly became abnormally shiny. Clang! The crisp sound of steel colliding sounded, and a faint spark was swept up, and then a figure was thrown out by brute force, and the luxurious villa was suddenly dismembered and turned into a pile of debris. A mere fish actually knows this trick. Raising his head, Wu Chen's gaze fell on Tiger, who was sent flying. He stared at him and said faintly, "How long are you going to pretend to be dead? This kind of ordinary laser shouldn't be able to kill you." Looking around, Tiger's whole body has become a black Iron Man. Armament hockey. Dustless's eyes flashed with understanding, staring at the dark steel skin, with a little heat and yearning. This is the native power of the world in front of him. Armament hockey can enhance a person's defense and attack power, acting like an invisible armor. It can also evolve into attack power, and then compete with devil fruit ability users. It can be said that one skill is multi-purpose and involves a wide range of fields. It's amazing, this guy actually knows armament hockey. Who did he learn it from? Although it's only a half-baked, but it's good to see it in advance. Looking at the black luster all over his body with interest, Dustless frowned and wondered. Tiger, who has a bounty of only 230 million berries, should not know armament hockey. Someone must have trained him. His face was cold, and Wu Chen murmured to himself in relief. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to learn armament hockey without a few years or even more than 10 years. It seems to be a laser. Standing up with difficulty, the tingling spread all over his body, and his whole body seemed to fall apart. Looking at his smoking arm, Tiger's voice was heavy and a little hoarse. Even with the armament hockey defense, his arm was penetrated by the hot light. In front of the terrifying laser, his hockey seemed to not exist. He's abnormally strong, and he's a celestial dragon. Uncontrollably coughing up blood, Tiger sucked in a breath of cold air. His face was gloomy, and the way he looked at Dustless had changed. It was like the madness of a dying beast. He can actually shoot out lasers. His ability seems to be related to light. Secretly guessing Dustless's ability, Tiger's entire body turned into black steel, shining brightly, giving off the feeling that his entire body was dyed with ink. Boring, this level of armament hockey doesn't work, not even the most basic defense. Wu Chen shook his head as he stared at Tiger's solemn face. Like an ancient awakened giant dragon roaring madly, that energy wave that he had never felt before, even if Wu Chen's state of mind was shocked, his expression also changed slightly. Chapter 394. In the face of the oppression and fear of death, people in desperate situations will always break out their potential. The light gathered at Dustless's fingertips is the front road to the end for them, which is a kind of oppression. No one wants to die, so if they want to live, they can only break out with stronger strength. The strong fluctuation spread, and the invisible waves covered the boundless area, even covering the sky of Mariewa, and the slaves who fled around and the marines who caught them were directly stunned. Is this the Haoshiku Haki? Savoring the remaining momentum suppression in the air, Dustless looked at the young figure in amazement, and a feeling of speechlessness arose in his heart. The person who awakened Haoshiku Haki is the future Empress, Boa Hancock. Under the oppression of Dustless's killing intent, Haoshiku Haki in Boa Hancock's body awakened. A slave can awaken Haoshiku Haki. Is this what it means to be in the opposite direction? The corners of his mouth twitched without a trace, and Dustless's heart was full of entanglement and strangeness. He looked at Boa Hancock like a monster. After a while, Dustless didn't see anything special about her. Even though Boa Hancock has eaten sweet fruit, and now awakened Haoshiku Haki, Dustless doesn't feel that she has the qualifications to become a king, and there is no difference from before. Even if she awakens Haoshiku Haki, her eyes looking at Dustless are filled with fear. Whiz! Noticing that Dustless's eyes were focused on Boa Hancock, Tiger quickly retreated. Although he was surprised that this beautiful girl could awaken Haoshiku, he was still on guard against Dustless with goosebumps. Fishman empty-handed, profound meaning Takashi Ryokan. Seizing this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Tiger waved his hand and used the most powerful skill in his life, condensing a water ball in his palm, and the endless impact broke out. The destructive chi waves were so powerful that they could topple mountains and overturn seas. Is this the last song? Wuchen raised his eyes and looked at the air waves that were whizzing towards him. Wuchen didn't dodge. He raised his small white hand slightly and a ripple splashed out in the void. Countless photons gathered crazily from all directions. A golden long sword suddenly condensed in his hand. Even the last attack is so fragile. After saying that, Wuchen raised the lightsaber in his hand high. The tip of the lightsaber condensed a dazzling white brilliance. He casually glanced at the oncoming violent impact and slashed out the lightsaber. Whiz! A dazzling golden light flickered and pierced through the night sky. The two forces were inevitably mixed together, but the golden slash had a greater advantage. It directly pierced through the oncoming shockwave and tore it apart. It went straight towards Tiger, who was in armament hockey state. Pucci! Tiger's dark body was penetrated by the sharp chop, his skin was torn and his flesh was blurred, and a scarlet blood stain was sprinkled in midair. Even though Tiger practiced armament hockey, he was still cut open by the sharp chop. Of course, this is also related to Tiger's hockey cultivation. If it were other strong people, Dustless would not be able to defeat them so easily. With such a serious injury, Tiger groaned and fainted in despair and unwillingness, lying on the ground unable to move. Want to run? How can it be so easy? Looking straight at the distant sky, Dustless sneered again and again. Even if Jinbe and Boa Hancock and others fled without a trace, they still couldn't hide under his majestic perception. Photons condensed on his calf and shone again with a dazzling brilliance, and the dark night sky shone brightly, as if it was daytime. As for Tiger, he had been ignored. Whiz! After locking the direction of several people, Dustless blasted out with his foot, and a straight light swept straight into the distance, and the straight light cut through the dark night sky. This is interesting. This invasion of Mariewa is really not that simple. After a while, the expected explosion did not sound. Dustless frowned, and some differences flashed in his eyes, and the majestic perception spread again. He thought that he was using some strange means to avoid the attack, but he was stunned to find that an unknown mysterious enemy suddenly appeared and took Dustless's attack instead of Jinbe and the others. This is Mariewa, not your backyard. With a cold look, Dustless's killing intent was overflowing, and a bright golden light swept out of his body. When he was about to flash and chase after the enemy, his feet were suddenly bound by a strong and powerful rough hand. Looking at it, it was the fishman Tiger. The fishman's vitality is unimaginably strong, and he doesn't die. Why do you want to die, or do you think I can't kill you? The light converged, and Dustless stared at Tiger, who was crawling on the ground, and asked aloud. His plan to chase was also stopped, and the Kusanagi sword in his hand was held high, shining with a dazzling cold light. He will not stop until he kills this fishman. Hearing this, Tiger just smiled with relief. The pursuit in my heart, you cold, bloodthirsty, superior Tenryubito can't understand it, and you will never understand it. Calmly and naturally looking at the sharp heaven cluster cloud sword, Tiger's dry and pale face carried a smile, giving people the feeling that he was like a spring breeze, like the warm sunshine of the third month of spring that refreshed people's hearts. Sorry, I don't intend to understand your unrealistic ideas. With frost hanging on his eyebrows, Dustless said indifferently, I am different from other Tenryubito, but I am also the same as them, and my bloodthirsty nature is purer than theirs. Whiz! After that, the Kusanagi sword went down, and the sharp sword light swept towards Tiger's head. The sword cut the edge, and under the shroud of this light, all living things were forbidden. Tiger also closed his eyes and waited quietly for the arrival of death. At this critical moment, a black shadow rushed over from the black night sky. It was extremely ferocious as it grabbed at the heavenly sword of gathering clouds. Obviously, the comber was an enemy, not a friend. Chapter 395. The unknown black shadow was extremely fast, and it was difficult for normal human eyes to catch it. In the blink of an eye, it was close to Dustless's side. Clang! The buzzing sound spread in the dark night sky, and the falling golden light sword was also stopped. With the light of the Kusanagi sword, a burly man with purple hair and a strong body could be seen. His muscles were extremely stylish, his aura was vigorous, his 2 or 3 meters tall figure was very oppressive, he was wearing a purple suit, his attitude was strict, and his eyes were awe-inspiring. Looking around, it was his dark big hand that grabbed Dustless's Kusanagi sword. Marine Headquarters Admiral. No, it should be said that it was the former Marine Admiral, Black Rishtzi. The Kusanagi sword turned into countless particles and dissipated. Wu Qin raised his head and stared at the purple man and asked with a blank expression, "You Marines are going to intervene in the matter of celestial dragons?" "You're really wide." The void splashed with faint ripples, and a plain voice resounded. "Or, you Marines have been presumptuous to the point that you can ignore celestial dragons. Hundreds of years have passed, maybe Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and your Marines have forgotten who the master of this world is." Hearing this, Z's expression was stiff, looking at Tiger who had been cut open, his eyes flashed with unbearable color, and he persuaded, "He is already a dead man, there is no need to kill him." Seeing Dustless's Kusanagi sword dissipated into photons, Z frowned, and when he was about to speak, he suddenly remembered the supreme identity of celestial dragons, and the words that were on the tip of his tongue were taken back. The black iron fist also returned to the appearance of a normal human. "Kill him." Worthy of the title of Unkillable Admiral, Black Wrist, Z, you are really different, you are so kind to the enemy. The corners of his mouth raised slightly, revealing a mocking smile. Dustless contemptuously said, "It's no wonder that it's like this. It's because there are rotten and ignorant people like you in the Marine that the so-called justice will be repelled by evil again and again. Even now, some people dare to invade places like Mariehua." Facing Z's cold gaze, Dustless coldly said, "It is worth mentioning that the current Marine is not even comparable to the later era. In this period, the 7 warlords of the sea has not yet been promised by the government. Compared with the powerful pirates, there is still a gap between the Marine and the pirates. However, because the world of One Piece is in a state of disunity, there is no threat to the Marine, and there are only a few of them. Overall, they still maintain the advantage, but if these scattered pirates gather together, they can easily destroy the Marine headquarters, excluding the world government. All in all, the Navy wasn't having a good time. However, the arm that he used to fight with Wu Qin was shaking uncontrollably. It was not willing to cooperate with Z. Looking at Dustless's eyes also changed. Chapter 396. Floating in the sky, Wu Chen's expression was abnormal. He lifted his golden arm and some slight cracks came into view. It was enough to prove how extraordinary and ferocious Z's punch was. Worthy of being called Black Wrist Z, he can actually make a partial Susanoo crack. His reputation is not in vain, the name Black Wrist is really not fabricated. Z is good at using armament hockey, so the world gave him the name Black Wrist Z. Being able to have such an extraordinary title also shows Z's attainments in armament hockey. If he only has a little knowledge of armament hockey, then it would be impossible for him to have the title Black Wrist. What the hell, it's just a group of parasites that rely on the protection of the government. How can it be? Z is far more surprised than dustless. He has seen celestial dragons before. For this group of the most evil parasites, not only him, but the entire marine, even the Gorosei and the entire human race have no good impression of them. This guy's strength is so extraordinary. It shows that celestial dragons are not all idiots. There must be other species like him. Z secretly thought. He originally thought that the celestial dragons were just ordinary-looking idiots, but now it seems that this was not the case. Thinking about it, with the temperament and ambition of the 5 elder stars, if the celestial dragons were trash without the strength to truss a chicken, then perhaps they would have been eradicated countless years ago. In this world where the strong are respected, it is impossible to live leisurely for hundreds of years just relying on the glory of the ancestors. While he was thinking, a dazzling brilliance came from the front. Z was slightly stunned. He raised his head and an indifferent face appeared in front of him. The evil power in his hand was clearly visible. What kind of ability fruit is this? Paramecia or Logia? It doesn't seem to be. Compared to the previous punch, the current attack was more large-scale. It was a completely hill-like giant arm with infinite power. It mercilessly blasted towards Z, armament hockey hardening. On the original basis, the dark skin shines and is many times stronger than steel. In such an embarrassing situation, Z can't avoid Dustless's attack. He can only rely on armament hockey to defend against Dustless's attack. This is also the biggest advantage of armament hockey. Both attack and defense are perfect. Boom boom boom, he spat out a mouthful of blood in the air, followed by a hazy figure flying out and crashing into the wall. A long and narrow gully was formed on the ground. I have to teach the Marines and the 5 elder stars a lesson. You seem to have forgotten who the master of the world government is. Seeing this, Wu Chen just sneered again and again. Seeing Z fall into the pit, his majestic momentum continued to rise. He didn't intend to stop. Although he didn't want to kill Z, he wanted to teach him a lesson. He wanted to know who was bigger between the world government and the celestial dragons. As for Boa Hancock and the others who had already escaped, Dustless didn't care. With light speed, it was useless for them to escape. The breath of the whole body is more and more stable, and the momentum is also domineering. Dustless has not awakened Haoshiku Haki. This kind of Haoshiku is innate and can't be cultivated. That being said, the murderous aura condensed on his body was far more powerful and oppressive than the Haoshiku. The aura was getting thicker and thicker, and it was extremely oppressive. At the same time, under the Black Night, several black figures came straight from all around. They were very fast and very experienced. They were all top powerhouses who had been through hundreds of battles. Behind them were white cloaks printed with the word, Justice. Royce South, Saint, the invasion of Mariehua has nothing to do with the Marine. If you are angry, you seem to have found the wrong target. The people guarding here are government personnel and intelligence agencies such as CP0. A voice came over, and the tone was filled with endless indifference. He didn't put the celestial dragons in his eyes at all. In the dark earth, several silhouettes could be vaguely seen. They were tall monsters with a body of 2 or 3 meters. Everyone's aura was powerful. Hearing this, Dustless frowned. The safety of Mariehua was indeed not related to the Marine headquarters. This was the safety of Gorosei, 5 elder stars, and CP0, CP9. Marine Fleet Admiral Sky, Admiral Sengoku, Hero Garp, looking over, Dustless's face was inevitably filled with surprise. Behind the 3 people, he could clearly see the 3 future admirals. However, they were only lieutenant generals now. At the same time, Black Wrist Z stood up again. His head was bruised and bleeding, and his whole body was dripping with blood. However, his complexion didn't change from beginning to end. They were all superficial wounds. Dustless had controlled the degree of attack very well. It didn't reach the extent of injuring his muscles and bones. "This is lively," the Marine's general mobilization. Seeing this scene, Dustless asked casually, but his heart was full of doubts. The Marine's task was extremely busy and tiring. Now the whole high-level secret appeared. Mariewa obviously has a big problem. "This has nothing to do with you." The rough old face stared at Dustless, and Fleet Admiral simply refused Dustless's question. His eyes looked at Dustless vaguely, and at the same time, he looked at the bleeding head of Z, and his brows were tightly frozen. "This Tenryubito is a bit evil." The same is true of several high-level Marines behind him. They look unnatural. If Dustless is a CP0 powerhouse, they can accept it, but wearing the uniform that Tenryu dares to wear, it makes people daydream. It is not difficult to see that Tenryubito, who is called garbage, is not as simple as it seems. 800 years ago, they were able to unify the world, and it was not just by talking. "It's really a serious and unreasonable Fleet Admiral." Hearing this, Dustless just smiled. It is inevitable that people will gossip about him, and Tenryubito in the eyes of the world is the existence of eating, drinking, and pleasure, and they never intervene in the tasks of the world government and Marine. However, one thing is certain, the entire high-level Marine can suddenly visit Mariewa at night, obviously ordered by Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, or there is an uncontrollable incident. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.